The choice of a running mate is always a serious concern for a presidential candidate. The selection is a serious early indicator of a potential president's judgment, and the choice can have serious campaign consequences. Barack Obama chose Joe Biden as his VP after the guy had unintentionally made some pretty racialist comments about him.
You got the first sort of mainstream African American who was articulate and bright and clean and a nice-looking guy. I mean, that's a storybook, man.
Obama's selection signaled to Americans that he has rather thick skin, and they would not have to tiptoe around their first black president. In the very same election, John McCain chose Sarah Palin, and while I don't want to dunk on a departed war hero, his pick indicated less than perfect judgment.
Did that hurt to hear? You'd say you would rather choose Lincoln?
Well, I don't lie, so I'll tell you a bit. You know, I think I described it earlier as a gut punch.
In 2016, Trump's choice of Mike Pence was an attempt to reach out to more traditional establishment conservatives. Hillary's choice of Tim Kaine signaled to progressives that, while she would certainly appreciate Bernie's endorsement in campaign rallies, his political revolution was unlikely to have a place in a Clinton White House. For Bernie in 2020, the choice of a running mate is more important than ever. Should he win, he would be the oldest president ever elected to a first term, beating the record of the current commander-in-chief. While unlike Trump, there have been no serious discussions surrounding Bernie's physical or mental aptitude, his advanced age heightens the significance of his VP pick, and the urgency of the decision. The sooner he picks a running mate, the sooner voters can know who would be in charge should the worst happen. As such, the discussion surrounding Bernie's running mate predates his 2020 announcement, and by a lot. George Solomon put a pretty strong shortlist together for Medium all the way back in August of 2017. At the end of February 2019, the Toronto Star published one of the most out-of-touch opinion pieces I've ever seen, suggesting Barack Obama, Michelle Obama, Hillary Clinton, and Oprah as potential VP picks. That's not a good list. What hints Bernie has already dropped rule out all four of these options. I'm going to break down Bernie's stated preferences and tell you who I think is most likely for him to select. I'll also touch upon this slightly different question: who should he pick? During an appearance on The Late Show back in December, Stephen Colbert asked Bernie Sanders what he thought about Beto O'Rourke. Bernie gave a perfectly nice assessment of his grassroots campaign before pivoting to talk about Elizabeth Warren and then Cory Booker. Bernie also brought up these two, and only these two, in his interview with The Breakfast Club. His bringing up Warren should be no surprise, as the two have been friends for decades. Warren is often described as the second most progressive senator, and she is a serious ally in the struggle against Wall Street greed, having developed the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. Then he mentions Booker, a more unlikely friend, as while Booker is progressive on many issues, he's well known to be funded by Wall Street. According to Open Secrets, Booker's top donors have included financial institutions like Goldman Sachs, Apollo Global Management, and Morgan Stanley, as well as New York corporate law firms like Paul Weiss, Gibbons PC, and Sullivan and Cromwell, and the pro-Israel PAC, NORPAC. But Bernie's mild praise is not likely to lead to an offer when it comes to selecting a running mate. In a more substantial and relatively recent interview with the Young Turks, Bernie gave some serious clues as to who he may be thinking of selecting.
What are the attributes you would look for in a vice president?
I think we would look for somebody who is maybe not of the same gender that I am, and maybe somebody who might be a couple of years younger than me, and somebody who can take the progressive banner as vice president and carry it all over this country to help us with our agenda and help us to rally the American people.
Here it may not sound like he's saying much, but he's actually whittling the field down quite substantially. I read from his comments 3 qualifications he's looking for. His VP must be a woman, younger than Bernie, and a genuine progressive. Let's break this down. First, when it comes to someone who is not the same gender as Bernie, that takes Cory Booker out of the running. It also means no Beto, no Biden, no Buttigieg, no Barack, no Bennett, no Brown, no Bullock, no billionaire Bloomberg, and no Bill de Blasio. He won't consider Castro or Yang, neither of the Johns, Nor will he consider Ojeda or Gillum. No Jay Inslee, Tim Ryan or Terry McAuliffe, nor Seth Moulton, Wayne Messam, Chris or Phil Murphy, Jeff Merkley, or Martin O'Malley. Anyway, you get the idea. It's going to be a woman. That eliminates about half of the possible options. The next clue is not as useful. Younger than Bernie only eliminates two prominent female Democrats that I can think of, Nancy Pelosi and Dianne Feinstein. I don't know that anyone suspected he would consider either of them, but for what it's worth, they're definitively eliminated. Next, let's move on to the next and final hint. That one's a little more open for interpretation, so let's listen to it one more time.
And somebody who can take the progressive banner as vice president and carry it all over this country to help us with our agenda and help us to rally the American people.
So who is a younger female progressive who Bernie thinks could spread the message all around the country? The establishment press would likely guess Kamala Harris. She certainly is a strong campaigner, great at articulating the progressive agenda, but I'm not sure Bernie or his supporters would consider her progressive enough. A good starting place might be to look at the standout victorious candidates endorsed by his group, Our Revolution. Aside from Bernie himself, the most famous member of this group is probably AOC, but as a woman who is too young to run for president, she's probably a poor choice for VP. Tulsi Gabbard was also supported by Our Revolution and is certainly a favorite amongst Bernie fans. She's been pretty solidly progressive for a good 7 years now and has proven herself to be a strong, charismatic competitor in the race for 2020. Tulsi also meaningfully proved her loyalty to Bernie Sanders in 2016 when she stepped down from the DNC. But there are some reasons to doubt this choice. I've never seen Bernie mention her. There doesn't appear to be a personal relationship there, and that could be a problem. Bernie tends to work with people he knows well and keeps friends for a very long time. Take, for instance, Bernie's 2016 campaign manager, Jeff Weaver. The guy began his career as a campaign staffer for Bernie way back in 1986, and Bernie stuck with him ever since. Bernie even put him in charge of Our Revolution. When he proved unpopular there, Bernie kept him in the organization, and while no longer campaign manager, he remains with Bernie for his 2020 run. Then there is Ben Cohen of Ben & Jerry's, another longtime supporter for Bernie, who first stumped for him in some of Bernie's earliest mayoral races. Now Cohen is a national co-chair of the Sanders 2020 campaign. There are also other Our Revolution candidates to consider. Rashida Tlaib, Ilhan Omar, and Pramila Jayapal are all potential options. They have made noise in Congress, but of the three, Omar probably has the largest profile, and not for the right reasons. Namely, she was widely smeared as an anti-Semite by both Republicans and Democrats, and in the press for criticizing the pro-Israel lobby AIPAC and making a reference to Puff Daddy. This, while an Islamophobic poster falsely connecting Omar to 9/11 hung outside the chamber of the West Virginia House of Delegates. Bernie offered the first and strongest defense of Omar amongst all the 2020 Democrats, followed soon after by Kamala Harris and Elizabeth Warren, but it's doubtful Bernie would pick her as a running mate. She may be innocent of the anti-Semitism accusations, but Omar probably should have been savvy enough to know that her kind of flippant tweets were politically tone-deaf. Beyond the Our Revolution candidates is the organization itself, one headed up now by Nina Turner. Turner has worked closely with Sanders since 2017, when she took over as the president and public face of the organization. Prior to that, during the 2016 primary season, Turner supported Hillary Clinton, but like many Democrats, Bernie won her support. Turner was later invited to become Jill Stein's running mate, but she declined the Green Party's invitation. Turner's profile has been raised by her frequent appearances on CNN, and she's remained close to Bernie, joining his 2020 campaign as national co-chair. Still, there are some drawbacks with Turner. Her experience as a public official is somewhat limited. The highest office she's ever achieved was Ohio State Senator, which was followed by a failed run for Ohio Secretary of State. Turner is no doubt a politically savvy Bernie loyalist, but she's probably better suited working for Bernie behind the scenes and in the press. Despite her ties with Bernie, on balance, her chances of being selected as his VP nominee seem lower than those of Gabbard. Even if Gabbard is not selected, a woman currently running for president is probably where Bernie's going to go. Primary opponents very commonly turn into running mates. Among the women currently running, a few are very likely to be discounted out of hand. Gillibrand, considering her experience as a U.S. Senator, is not polling particularly well. Despite describing herself as a progressive, Amy Klobuchar is far too conservative to join Bernie's ticket. And Kamala Harris, likely to be Bernie's most powerful challenger, seems to have less of a relationship with the man than Tulsi. At least Tulsi's in Our Revolution. Plus, there's the fact that Harris has unequivocally said, "I am not a democratic socialist." There's also Stacey Abrams, who is considering a run and who Bernie has both praised and endorsed in the past. But so far, she's not really showing up in the polls, so her profile may be too low. The most obvious female candidate, younger than Bernie, who he believes capable of carrying the progressive message all around the country is, of course, Marianne Williamson. I'm just kidding. It's Elizabeth Warren, the candidate he routinely mentions in interviews and has a long-standing relationship with. The two are very close. Sanders once told an MSNBC anchor, "I talk to Elizabeth Warren every single day." Sure, Bernie supporters remember her failure to back him during the 2016 primaries, but the two have remained close, and they are about as politically aligned as anyone Bernie could find with her level of experience. If I were a betting man, I'd say Warren is Bernie's top choice. Now, that doesn't mean he should necessarily opt for her. There are drawbacks with Warren. First, she's not the most talented campaigner in the race. No offense, I'm not saying that Warren is terrible. I'm just saying if you look at Gabbard or Harris or Beto or Castro or Yang, they all seem to have a level of charisma that she just doesn't have. Another problem is that adding her to the ticket doesn't add much to the campaign. She's best known for her fight for working class families and against Wall Street greed, an area where Bernie already has credibility in spades. Overall, I do think Warren would be a solid pick for Bernie, but there's at least 4 other candidates I think he should also consider. First, there's Tulsi Gabbard. Tulsi is perhaps best known for her anti-interventionist policies, and foreign policy is probably a softer area for Bernie. She's young, dynamic, and very popular amongst progressives. She has the backing of Our Revolution, and she proved in her CNN town hall that she ranks high on the charisma metrics.
The skepticism and the questions that I raised were very specific around incidents that the Trump administration was trying to use as an excuse to launch a U.S. military attack in Syria. Now, I served in a war in Iraq, a war that was launched based on lies, and a war that was launched without evidence.
Number 2 is Pete Buttigieg. Why not pick a running mate designed specifically to take down Trump's running mate?
Please don't judge my state by our former governor. When we had this huge and painful controversy in 2015, when Mike Pence divided our state with this so-called Religious Freedom Restoration Act, which was really a license to discriminate, provided you remembered to mention your religion as an excuse for discriminating. That's what that was.
As a gay man from Mike Pence's home state, Pete Buttigieg is perfectly poised to hammer the opposition in a VP debate. Buttigieg also appears to be a solid progressive, and with his nerdy, intellectual disposition, he's likely to be taken seriously without outshining Bernie. Here's what I mean by that.
Would you say that you're more liberal or less liberal than AOC, Nancy Pelosi? Where are you on the ideological spectrum?
I consider myself a pretty strong progressive, but I also don't consider the left-center spectrum to be the most useful way to look at our politics right now, because I think it's gotten jumbled up both by the current president and by the pace of change.
So do you consider yourself more of a centrist?
So are you Chinese or Japanese?
Then there's Kamala Harris. If Bernie wanted to reach out to the mainstream of the Democratic Party without getting too out of whack with his own views, Kamala Harris is clearly the best choice. She's agreed with Bernie on the Green New Deal and in defending Ilhan Omar, and despite expressing openness to other options, she hasn't discounted Medicare for all. In fact, she's towed pretty much the same line as Elizabeth Warren on this subject, remaining open to other options, but co-sponsoring and supporting Bernie's bill.
Everyone, all, should receive the health care they need regardless of where they live, their income, or their zip code. And that's what this bill is about, and I am proud to co-sponsor it.
Finally, there's Yang. While you often hear narratives in the mainstream media about Bernie not having enough support from women or black voters, the reverse is actually the case when you look at any of the polling. A recent Monmouth University poll found that 71% of women found him favorable compared to just 69% of men. He's favored by 69% of white non-Hispanics compared to 72% among other races. If Sanders wants to win back the working class, blue-collar white men in Trump country, he needs a VP who can speak to that group. Andrew Yang has a strong theory on what caused the rise of Trump. He generally credits economic displacement, and he has a strategy for reaching out to former Dems who voted for Trump.
So I'm with this trucker in Iowa, and he says to me, I don't think that Democrats care about people like me. I can understand why he feels that way, but that's incredibly destructive. There's now some kind of pathology that if the person who's suffering is a white man of a certain background, then the suffering somehow is somehow diminished. Like it doesn't count as much. It's one thing I'm saying to people is look, it's not immigrants that are taking these jobs away. Just facts. It is not immigrants. It is the fact that technology is pushing our economy in a direction that makes it harder and harder for many Americans to get by based upon this current I trade my time for money model.
So those 4 plus Elizabeth Warren are my top 5 picks for Bernie's running mate. But the discussion doesn't end here, so let me know in the comments down below, what do you think? Who should he pick?
When you talk about other candidates, Elizabeth Warren is somebody I have known for over 20 years. She is a friend of mine, and she is a very, very good senator and a very serious person.